What is going on, ladies and gentlemen? This is the Fourth and Fantasy Podcast, episode 20. Woo,
it's crazy.
Episode 20.
It's
we
crazy.
Are here. We've been doing this. Listen, I'm just gonna say, I don't know, for some reason it just hit me, but you know, this idea just came out of the blue for us, right? End of January, we talked about it, and you know, we've been doing it for 20 straight weeks.
It's nuts.
Nuts.
I still remember waking up to that text, and I'm like, yeah, why the hell not?
Why not?
Let's do it.
Why not us?
Let's do it.
You
Here
know?
we are. Yeah, why not us?
So here we are, ladies and gentlemen. Like I said, episode 20. I'm your host, Meek. Across the table, I got my main man, Wu.
What up?
And we're always here to talk fantasy football for you. And we have a lot to talk about today. You know, we're going to be continuing our way too early rankings series. Today, we're going to give you running backs. May see some surprises, may not see some surprises. You never know. But just to kick us off, we've hit 1,100 plus plays across Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube. Make sure you follow us on all of our socials: Twitter at Fourth and Fantasy Pod, Instagram at Fourth and Fantasy, YouTube at Fourth and Fantasy. Make sure you give us a like, a follow on all of our socials, and leave a comment because you might see yourself on the show.
Yep. So,
quick question of the day, Woo. I shoved this in here because I know I said last episode I was trade hungry after the draft and everything like that. So I made a trade in another league that I'm in, and I wanted you to take a look at it and evaluate from your perspective. Am I tripping or did I make a good move? So just to set the scene for you. So I'm in a 12-team dynasty league, IDP league. So that means that we set for defensive line, linebackers, and DBs. I was the worst team in the league. I was gracious enough to get the number one pick, but I also tanked hard that year, and I was able to get 4 first-round draft picks. So I have Genty on my team. I was able to get Egbuka, Travion Henderson, and who's my fourth? Oh, and I think Luther Burden I took with another first round pick. So I got young guys galore. But I was going through my team and I was looking at it, and you know, I know we talked about this in our Dynasty Tips episode, that you know, you got to figure out whether you're a contender or pretender or a contender, and I looked at my team, and you know, I'm not there. So my team before this trade, I had Herbert as my starting quarterback. I had Breece Hall, Genty. My wide receivers were tough. I had Metcalf, Burden, and Egbuka. Mark Andrews was my tight end. Travion Henderson was my flex. My super flex was J.J. McCarthy. So I looked at my team and I said, well, you know, what can I do to gain some value here? And I saw that Herbert was hot on the block. People were looking for him. So I traded Justin Herbert and a 2026 second-round pick, and I got myself back Bryce Young and Tedero McMillan, the stack. So you tell me, how'd I do? Did I do good? Did I do bad?
So when I first saw it in the doc, before you even just went through your spiel, giving the background story, you know, of where you're at in this league and, you know, what the team looks like, I think it's a good deal. Now that you've given some context of your team, not necessarily competing, you just brought in all these young guys onto your team, some fun, exciting rookies. Who'd you say your other quarterback was? Is it Superflex?
Yes, it was J.J. McCarthy. And then I have Geno Smith on my bench as a third QB.
Okay. So, first off, love how young your team is, because this can set you up for a lot of different avenues. You could either hit on all of these guys and all of a sudden your team is gross. Mm-hmm. Or due to the youth of your team, if people are still believers at some point and you've given up on them, they still have value that you can ship out if needed.
Yep.
When it comes to this trade specifically, I love it. We've talked, you know, a crazy amount about, you know, the Panthers. You know, we have a couple teams this year that we're super in on, and the Panthers is one of them. And I know you're definitely in on Bryce Young more than I am. Yep. So that's falls into our tips episode. If you have a conviction about somebody, go get them and prove yourself right. But to do it with a stack, that's the key piece here, because this is a stack, I think that makes me like it even more, because that can be such a huge advantage on a week.
Correct. And that was the main reason why I was even willing to do the trade, was because I was very weak at wide receiver, and I believed in Bryce Young. I think he could take a step forward, and the fact that I could pair them with McMillan, I think was a slam dunk for me. So I mean, we'll have to see. Like I said, I'm young guys galore, and I have 5 of the top rookies now. So I have Genty, McMillan, Egbuka, Henderson, and Burden. Like Burden doesn't even make my team right now.
Okay. Yeah.
Which is kind of nuts.
These are good problems to have.
So we'll see how the team develops. I may give you an update, but yeah, I went super young.
How did the trade talks go? Was this deal that happened? Was this anything close to how the conversation started?
It was exactly what I kind of went out. So how it happened was, this dynasty manager was, I think he was 6 players over the cap, and I guess he didn't want to drop players, so he was putting out like people on the block, and he put Bryce Young on the block. And so I had talked to him, and I said, hey, so you put Bryce Young on the trading block. What are you looking for him? Waited for his response, and then that was kind of when he told me about the player limit, and I was saying, what were you looking for Young? And he was saying that he was looking to do a 2-for-1 trade or something like that, but it would have to be a proven QB. And then I had said, what about Herbert? And then I said, could we do? I had texted. I said, could we do Young and McMillan for Herbert in a second? And then I just threw the trade in there, went to bed, and then at like 1:30 in the morning, I woke up to go to the bathroom and looked at my phone. I was like, a trade was completed. Looked at it, it was my trade, and I was like, nice.
That's a way to wake up.
Yep,
very nice.
So it wasn't even really any back and forth. Like I put the trade in, and he hit accept.
Yeah, no, my final answer here, love the trade. Obviously, especially because he's your guy, losing Herbert is kind of tough.
It is.
But for the context of your team, I think this is a great move.
Yeah. So, I know I selfishly threw this one in here, ladies and gentlemen, but if you ever have trades or you have any team advice or things like that, send it our way, and you'll see yourself on the show. We'll discuss it.
Oh, yeah.
So, getting into some NFL news that we have going on. First one, kind of a big one. Brock
Huge
Purdy
deal.
and the 49ers agreed to terms on a 5-year, $265 million extension. Purdy was due $5.34 million in this final year of his rookie deal, but he's going to receive $181 million in total guarantees, including $165 million in the first 3 years of a deal that runs through the 2030 season. So it looks like the 49ers have their franchise quarterback of the future. How does this make you feel, Will?
You know what? Shout out to Brock Purdy, man. I want to say this because I think he absolutely deserves this money. And the whole conversation of like, oh, he's a system quarterback. It's plug and play. Anybody could be good there. He doesn't deserve the money. If anybody could play there and do well, why did he end up in that spot?
Very correct.
And why is it his fault that he ended up in that spot and now he's performing? He balled
out here in that spot.
He's gone to a Super Bowl. He's gone to a couple conference championships. 1 year in the playoffs, his elbow goes noodle arm, and that's not his fault. That could have been another Super Bowl appearance.
I had McCaffrey playing quarterback in that game. I remember
exactly. So shout out to Brock Purdy. You deserve this money. Especially being the last pick of the NFL draft.
Right.
Like I never understood the hate to begin with when it came like this whole conversation of does he deserve an extension or not.
So how does this affect the ancillary pieces for the 49ers offense? Like, do you think this is, good news for Christian McCaffrey? I mean, Ayuk's out for an extended period of time, but like, does this, work for Kittle? Like, what are we thinking?
It should be pluses all around the board for any offensive piece. Yes, it's going to be difficult for the 49ers to be able to afford, kind of those like big name players that they had when they went on that, those couple Super Bowl runs. Right. The whole team will probably take a hit. When it comes to the offense, I don't see any negatives here because you've seen all the positives that he's brought, over the last couple of years.
And that's the kind of the nature of the beast with the NFL is like you make your run with your rookie quarterback, and then when it's time to pay, then you gotta go through the draft. See the Philadelphia Eagles, right? They paid Jalen Hurts a massive contract, but then had massive hits on the defensive end that propelled them into a Super Bowl championship. So.
Yeah, and one other shout I want to give is to Brock Purdy's agent, 181 guaranteed.
Yeah,
that's crazy. That's a crazy number.
We love that.
Good job all around.
Absolutely. Next piece of news: Derrick Henry signed himself a 2-year extension worth $30 million to stay with the Ravens.
I think the Ravens like where he's at physically.
Yeah. I think that's the key piece right there is that if you're the Baltimore Ravens, you don't sign him for $15 million a year.
Nope.
To just be like a back that fades into the mist.
Especially when you're a team who has Lamar Jackson and has Super Bowl aspirations, you don't just throw money out for no reason.
No. So I mean, and they were able to get a great look at him last year and I didn't even realize this. He rushed for 1,900 yards.
And nobody talked about it.
Nobody talked about it because it was all about Saquon, but he had 1,921 rushing yards, 16 touchdowns. Like,
yeah.
You forget like how great Derrick Henry is.
You take 400 yards and 5 touchdowns off that season, you're still ecstatic with what he did.
Oh my God,
at his age,
right? And that might be what we're talking about this year. Like, who know? I mean, who knows? It all depends. But
give me a third of that, or excuse me, give me 3/4 of that, and I'll be so happy taking him in any league that will. If people let him slide, give me him all day. Yeah. I'm buying all the stock.
I think he's a smash and redraft. Do you? I guess so. My question, we take the lens into redraft. Is he a first round draft pick for people?
He could be,
because he went for 1,900 yards last year. You know what I mean? Like, and nothing really changed with Baltimore. Yeah, he's a year older, but they just signed him to an extension. So it's like,
I know we're sitting here saying that the extension is like, a massive green flag, but I wonder if enough people will be nervous about the age to kind of let him slip a little bit ADP wise. Sure. If you took him in the first round, I'm not mad at it. It depends on how high and who's still there.
Oh my God. So I was just looking. So from 2019 on, he's been, for fantasy finishes, been the running back 3, 2, 16 when he broke his foot and he played 8 games, then 4, 8, 2.
I mean, that's a pretty good track record.
That guy's nuts.
Yeah, I mean, I would take him in the first.
On Derrick Henry, actually.
I know I am. I gotta see what the rest of the crowd's like.
Yeah. Next piece of news: the NFL owners are having a meeting at Viking headquarters to discuss multiple things. Of those multiple things, the first one is going to be the tush push ban.
So stupid.
Please keep it in the NFL. This is the first year that I have drafted or I've taken Jalen Hurts in a dynasty league. I would like to enjoy Jalen Hurts. Mm-hmm. Please do not ban this.
Yep.
Listen, all I'm going to say is you can do it too if you want to. You just
absolutely.
It's up to you. It's not the Eagles' fault that they're smashing when it's 1st and 5 or
if
first and 2.
If I'm the Eagles because of all this, and let's say it better not get banned. If it stays, how it is, and nothing ends up happening, if I'm the Eagles, I'm running it even more, to be just a big middle finger to the rest of the league.
And I'm trying
because you can't do it like we can.
Is the part that they're trying to ban is the push from like the up back or the running back?
Yeah, they're bringing all these like safety concerns in. But I saw a quote from the Eagles. I think it was the owner. He's like, "There's no data that backs the claim that this is a dangerous play."
Right.
I guess it's only been a few years and maybe there's enough data for it, but still, if that's the case, then, this is just other teams being upset that they can't do it.
Sure. And I wonder if the ban is that you can't push the quarterback, what if the Eagles get creative and it's like you push the right and left guard to give more push, and then Hurts can then maneuver, go left to right.
They could do that, or Jalen Hurts also squats like 750 pounds, so I'm not sure it's going to make that big of a deal if he can't get a push because his legs are massive.
Right,
like he can get low to the ground, and I don't think it's going to really affect them whether they can push him or not. But this play shouldn't be touched. If you can't run it, don't be mad. Stop it.
Right. The next piece of news that is also going to be talked about is the playoff seeding.
This one's interesting.
So I forgot which team. Do you remember which team who brought this one up? Was it the Rams?
It might have been. Look at the article.
So, anyways, what's being proposed right now is changing the seeding to the playoffs instead of the current state right now, where it's the 4 division winners and then the 3 wildcard seedings. It's strictly on your record and how you finish in the AFC or the NFC. And I'm trying to pull up.
Interestingly enough, Detroit proposed it.
It was Detroit. That's who it was. Thank you.
I wonder if it's because the Vikings got robbed.
Maybe.
Absolutely robbed. And they could have been on the other side of that.
Yes. So what it essentially is that from like last year, I know in the AFC it didn't really change much. I think the Chiefs were the 1 and the Ravens were the 2. I think the only thing that really changed were the Chargers would have been a 4 seed and having a home playoff game against the Texans. But then in the NFC, I think, which is why I understand now Detroit putting this up is where this comes into play. So if this were seeded the right way, I think it was Detroit was the 1, Minnesota was the 2, and then the 4th seed we were talking about was Tampa Bay, but they had like a 8-9 or a 9-8 record, and they would have been the 7 seed. So, thoughts on that? What do you think? What do you think that improves the overall product of the NFL, or
Yeah,
do we stick to what we know?
As long as they're keeping the division winners still having a guaranteed spot, I think reseeding shouldn't affect anything because, the NFL is one of those, professional sports league where the divisions really matter and it kind of brings those rivalries in. Those are the only teams that you're playing more than once throughout the year. And that's a special part of the NFL that, other leagues don't have. So I think they do need to keep that. So the division winners still should absolutely get an automatic bid. But like you said, if it's like an NFC South team that goes 8-9, they shouldn't be a top 4 seed. They shouldn't get a home playoff game.
No.
So
but I will give the I guess the devil's advocate, because the only time where I've seen where it actually benefits to the lower seed, this is way, way back. I'm going back in the time machine.
Oh no.
I want to say it was like 2008, actually 2009. It was the year that the Seattle Seahawks were 2010. You know what I'm talking about, when they played the Saints.
Yeah.
And they were like 8-8, had a home playoff record, and that was when Marshawn Lynch had his beast mode run, like the first one, and knocked them out of the playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
So
it's right here. Saints were 11-5.
Yes.
And they had to go on the road.
Yep. And they played the 8-8 Seattle Seahawks, and they lost. So I guess there's your devil's advocate of like, if a team wins a division, like you give them the bonus of playing a home game, because you never know, they pull something off like that. Now we're talking about it, I want to say that also happened to Tampa Bay 2 years ago. Didn't Tampa Bay was the division winner. I don't know how great their record was, but they went deep into the playoffs. When they lost.
Is this the year after Brady?
No. This was not last year, but the year before, when they went. Didn't they? I thought they went to the NFC Championship game and they lost to.
Was this with Brady?
No, this was with Baker. This was Baker's first year.
I could have sworn. I don't know if I remember them going to.
Unless I'm making something up. I could be totally making something. Maybe they didn't. Maybe they lost to the Lions, but they beat the Eagles or something like that. I don't know. I'm just throwing stuff out
I like
here.
the idea. At the end of the day, I mean, it would spice things up a little bit, as long as they're not. My main point is, as long as they're not getting rid of. The division winners having an automatic bid, then
we're there.
Yeah, I'm in on it.
Yeah. Next one, quick one. NFL is planning on discussing, whether the NFL players are going to be playing in the Olympic flag football league.
It should be an automatic yes
in 2028. I think what I had saw when I was searching around about this is that the USA flag football team has named their roster for this summer because they're going down to Panama for like the international games that they've won for like 5 straight years. But they're still considering having NFL players on the team. And could you just imagine, like, you're one of those USA flag football players and it's just like, Jamar Chase is going to take your spot.
But like, let's be real. Come on. It's just, let's say they keep this whole like NFL players can't play. It's just gonna be the same story with like the NBA, like basketball. Back in the day, you couldn't be, if you were in the NBA, you couldn't play. It was all college, and then we kept losing, and it's like, all right, enough of this. Let's send out the dream team with Jordan and Ewing and all those guys. So it's like, at the end, it's at some point, if it doesn't happen now, and like the flag football actually catches some steam, at some point they're going to be playing anyways. So you might as well go out and win now. This is America. That's what we do. We dominate the Olympics.
Absolutely, we do. One player, if you could have one player on this flag football team, who would it be?
It's got to be Lamar.
Okay.
Lamar would be gross. He basically is playing. He's basically playing flag football every week.
Oh my God, that's actually phenomenal.
Yeah, Lamar all day. He would be the most fun to watch.
I think who'd be actually pretty dominant is Devon Achane. You put Devon Achane, or you do like a combo backfield of Devon Achane and Jahmyr Gibbs. Who touches those guys?
Yeah, nobody. That's what I mean. Just let America just dominate, because that's what we're gonna do at some point, whether it's in 2028 or in 2048.
Right. So let us know who your your lock would be for the Olympic team. Last bit of news before we get into our way too early rankings. You probably have already seen that the schedule has been released. This is the first time that Wu and I have been able to talk about it. So Wu, I put the strength of schedule, and then on top of that, the over and under wins for every single team in the NFL. Yep. I highlighted a couple.
Some tough lines here.
Yeah, some very tough lines. Not a lot of overs that I like. But as you're looking at this, in all 32 teams, what jumps out at you?
Should I just get this one out of the way?
Yeah, do it.
Yeah, okay. So the Jets have 5.5.
There it is.
Can we talk about this for a second? Listen, this is not me
It's
saying
the one team that I had highlighted in green, meaning I would take the over on the wins.
Yeah, it's like, listen, I get it. You know, we're a dumpster fire. Like, nothing ever goes right. I have high hopes for Aaron Glenn. Who knows? 5.5 is crazy. Like, the defense had a very down year last year, but Jermaine Johnson is coming back. Aaron Glenn is a defensive-minded guy. Steve Wilkes comes over from San Francisco. Like, the defense is going to be gross. I have very high expectations for the defense. Maybe Ahmad can earn his Sauce title back if he decides to, play well and get back to his all-pro self.
Call him out.
Oh, I'm calling him out because last year was pathetic. But 5.5, like, this should be like 6.5, 7.5. And at that case,
they're not Jussie riders. So, that's what it is.
Nobody else is sussy for Jussie. And you know what? Not everybody can be on the right side of history. But 5.5 is nuts. Like, if it's 6.5, 7.5, and you want to say under, sure. 5.5, I don't know if I go that far.
Yep. So as I'm looking, as I looked at it, there were a couple of teams I want to highlight. The first one that I want to say is there's no shot that the Indianapolis Colts win 7.5 games.
Yeah, no, it's
like,
easy under.
You're out of your mind.
Unless they put Tyler Warren at quarterback, and then maybe they have a chance.
That's the only way. They lost 2 interior linemen. Like, you're trotting out Anthony Richardson, which, by the way, did you see the Chargers schedule release video?
No.
Oh, they came after Anthony Richardson hard.
Oh God.
So they did the theme of like Minecraft, and they were like on the Indianapolis Speedway racing, and he was in a go-kart, and it pulls over and it says Anthony Richardson ran out of gas, like making fun of him during the season when he took a play off when they were in the red zone.
Mm-hmm.
So I think 7.5 is crazy.
Yeah, it's a little high.
Crazy.
Yeah.
The other one that's crazy, and this one sucks because I really wanted to take the over on their wins, is the New England Patriots.
Way too high.
8.5 is nuts.
Yeah.
Nuts. I thought for sure that they were going to be like 6.5, and I would have hammered the over easily on that one. But you're gonna tell me the Patriots go 4 wins to 9 wins? Like, no, you're out of your mind.
It's way too high. I fully
for this early.
Yes,
you know what I mean.
I fully expect them to be a much better team than they were the last year or two. But 8.5 is a little steep for me. Like 9 wins, like 9 or 10 wins is like a ceiling. This should not be like a betting line.
Right.
So I think that's way too high.
Yep. And what was the last one? Oh,
cover your ears, Zach. But like, it's coming.
It's time.
Yeah.
It's okay. Time to talk
it's
about
okay.
it. Pittsburgh Steelers 8.5 wins. It's not happening this year. There's no Will Howard's there, but he's shaking in his boots right now.
There is 0 point in going 9-8 or 10-7 with this roster, getting into the playoffs and losing round 1.
Yeah.
Just go have a high first round pick. It's way more fun that way.
Yep.
It's way more fun.
Like, you'd have to
don't get stuck.
You'd have to expect the defense to hold a team to 14 points, and I don't even think this offense can score 14 points.
Yeah, it's
in the
tough
current state that it's in right now. So we'll have to wait and see. But let us know what you think about these over unders. But now's the time. We're gonna get into the main topic of our show, which is our way too early rankings. We're here to talk running backs. This time, I think last episode we went running backs we did quarterbacks 1 through 10. We were actually able to do running backs 1 through 12. So we got a couple extra ones. Obviously, then Wu and I have some honorable mentions that we want to talk about.
Yep.
So this is a very laid back, unbutton the collar. I know Wu's wearing, a very, dapper outfit in this episode.
Yeah, I just got out of work. Listen, I'm a corporate sellout. It's okay. Everybody can say it. Laugh it up. Somebody's got to pay the bills.
I'm here in the t-shirt and shorts. This is a very laid back rankings. We're here, here to talk about.
It's May 19th,
right?
Man.
Just talk about who we may be interested, what to expect, but none of this is concrete. As Wu always says, projections are completely fluid.
Very fluid. We're just gathering the kindling. There's no fire here yet.
No fire yet. Yeah. So we're gonna kick it off. So again, just like the quarterback rankings, these are our consensus between Wu and I's list. But at number 1, we both have him. Is Bijan Robinson. Bijan Robinson is an absolute beast. Last year had 1,456 rushing yards, 14 touchdowns to go along with 431 receiving yards, and he only had 1 receiving touchdown. For some reason, I feel like he had way more.
Yeah, it's going to go up.
But, I know why I had him up here, Will, but you tell the people why you think Bijan Robinson is the number 1 running back.
Well, I'm not going to, so putting this list together for me, I had a pretty difficult time. There was a lot of names that I liked in a lot of different spots. And because I'm still messing around with our projection sheet, and I haven't really mastered that yet. So I used it. I used it for the quarterbacks. I went away from it for the running backs. I wanted to just get my initial thoughts out here. But for Bijan, I mean, we knew so we had this big craze with Genty coming in this year. He was the automatic 101 in rookie drafts, and that was the same story with Bijan out of Texas. And last year was kind of that first year where you're like, okay, yeah, this makes sense why he was, so highly touted, and there was, so many people wanted him. I think the thing for Bijan, why I ended up having him at 1, because I had it anywhere from 1 through 3. I was kind of going through a lot of guys, and I ended up with Bijan at 1 because, yes, we can see he can do it both in running the ball and catching the ball. He's a dual threat. But I think the big thing for this year is with Michael Penix taking over the reins, he's only got 3 NFL games under his belt. I think Bijan's going to be a massive safety net for him.
Oh, yeah.
Especially early on in the year.
And Penix isn't a big runner either, too. So, like, you can expect a lot of dump-offs going his way, which is huge in a PPR format if you have Bijan Robinson.
And we just saw that with Kirk Cousins. I'm pulling up his receiving numbers right now. He had 61 receptions last year on 72 targets. The targets came down overall from the season before, but I fully expect Bijan to be a really helpful piece for a young quarterback like Penix, who's still trying to get his feet wet in the NFL. He's only played 3 games, and one of them was Week 18 when those games don't really matter.
Oh yeah, there's not much we really need to say about Bijan Robinson. Like I guess we could argue like the 101 between I think the top 3 names that we have here.
Yes.
But if I'm someone who's sitting there with the 101, I want the guy who is still yet to reach his prime.
Correct.
You know what I mean? And
he's only played 2 years.
He's only played 2 years, and I think he's just scratching the surface of his potential, which is crazy to say for someone who went for 1,400 yards and 14 touchdowns.
Yeah.
But like I feel like there's more there. I don't know. That's just me, maybe.
Absolutely.
But number 2 on our consensus list, you would think that
it was really tough not having him here.
I know, but we're going Jahmyr Gibbs. Listen, I love Jahmyr Gibbs. Jahmyr Gibbs is the reason why I won a championship this past year in my fantasy football league. But what do you say about a player who plays half the amount of snaps, but yet can put up crazy amount in our league? Woo, in our scoring format, he was the number 1 running back in our league.
Yes,
you know what I
was.
mean? Like that's insane to think about. A player who plays like 50% of snaps is able to just go off and be our number 1 running back in our league is insane. So, I think another year, the negatives of it, like Ben Johnson's gone and they have to, go to a new coordinator, but I'm not scared if I'm a Jahmyr Gibbs manager, because like you know who your key pieces are and you stick with your key pieces, and I think Jahmyr Gibbs is one of those.
Yeah, so the guy we just talked about, Bijan Robinson, played 75% of snaps last year out of the running backs.
I'm ready for this.
Jahmyr Gibbs played 56. 56. That's like,
and outscored him.
It's damn near 20% less, and he outscored him.
Yep.
So this is what we mean when how special Jahmyr Gibbs is. A couple things. Yes, the Ben Johnson departure sucks. I don't think the identity of this team with Dan Campbell, the gritty, we're going to bite kneecaps off, we're stronger and we're more physical,
yep.
and we want it more than you, that's not going to change. And running the ball is, fits that bill perfectly. The other thing I want to say is, David Montgomery dealt with some injuries last year, and we finally started to see that separation of, okay, we can trust Jahmyr Gibbs having a lot of these touches. I'm not saying they phase out David Montgomery completely this year. They could go a whole season and be the same.
I think he's necessary to the offense.
I agree. My prediction this year is that as the year goes on, yes, there's still going to be a split there, but I think once we get towards the end of the year, you're going to see that gap start to widen between the touches between Montgomery and Gibbs, because we saw what Gibbs could do without Montgomery.
Yeah, I wanted to see if there was anyone else on the depth chart, and there really isn't. Like, so I think they're gonna roll the same situation that they have, with David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs as your Sonic and Knuckles combo, because they won 15 games last year. Like I don't think there's a drastic change that needs to be made, but over the next like year or two, like, could you just imagine, if Jahmyr Gibbs had like 70 or 75% of the running back, like backfield in Detroit. Like this guy would do absolute numbers. Like I just keep looking back at week 18. I know nobody did fantasy football in week 18, but this guy had 139 rushing yards, 3 rushing touchdowns to go along with 31 receiving yards and a receiving touchdown. Like he just does it all.
There's way too many pluses for him.
Right. And pretty much at least 1 through 4 as we get into it. Like, the key that, I feel as though is in a successful, fantasy football team is when it comes to running backs, you need a running back who can do both, who can run the ball and catch, right? Bijan Robinson does that. Jahmyr Gibbs does that. Like if you don't have a running back who also catches passes out of the backfield and catches those dump offs, like what are you doing?
Yeah. Like I said, there's way too many pluses for him. The explosiveness is off the charts. He's a home run play waiting to happen every single snap. He plays on, I'll say it, the best offense in the league. I don't think that's necessarily a hot take.
No.
Like I said, the ground and pound game, Detroit's going to run the ball. The identity's not going to change because of Ben Johnson. He plays with a quarterback who can't run, so there's going to be dump off opportunities. Also, that offensive line is basically going to be a Hall of Fame offensive line at some point.
They're all studs.
It checks every single box, and the youth is there, and he's doing it, not even being the lead guy. So there's more to his game that we haven't even seen yet, and for him to be sitting where he is right now is nuts. And when I first made my list, he was my one. I ended up switching it.
There's nothing wrong with that.
I ended up switching it around a little bit. Like we said, these rankings are fluid. He could be my one by the end of the summer. But when I first did it and before my adjustments, he was my one.
Yeah. So moving into our number 3, and it feels like such a slight. It feels so disrespectful to have him here, but it's Saquon Barkley of the Philadelphia Eagles. All I'm going to say is, last year, 2,005 rushing yards. 13 touchdowns. Should have been more, and we can hem and haw about it. But I believe, and people can come at me for this, but I believe that's the best that Saquon Barkley we will ever see.
Probably.
You know what I mean? Like, he had 388 touches in the regular season. And then I don't have his postseason stats, but I bet you I can pull it up really quick. I don't have it, but I know in the postseason he had a crazy amount of touches there too, and yes. I want to say he was like 5 all time for like most touches like through regular and postseason. Like that's a lot for a 28-year-old running back right now.
Yeah, it's a lot of work, and I'll take over here while you look for those playoff stats. There's really nothing I can say here about Saquon that people don't already know when it comes to what he's capable of, and just how he's a stud. There's no other really way to say it. The reason why I ended up with him at 3 because you have to think about negatives. The age, sure, the age isn't really like my biggest thing, but yes, he out of the ones we've talked about so far that we think have the opportunity to be the number 1 overall, he is the oldest, so I do factor that in just a little bit. But we just talked about, being able not only to be able to run the ball, but also being worked into the passing game. Out of the 3 names we've gone through so far, he is the one that's going to get the least amount of dump offs.
Yeah.
And that's a major part of fantasy football. When he was in New York, it was dump off city, screen city, and that was like that extra added piece when he was running behind a terrible offensive line, and the running game wasn't exactly up to where it is now. But now he can go for 2,000 yards.
Right.
And Jalen Hurts, if he needs to pick up some yards, that's what he's going to do. Not to say that he won't dump it down here and there, but the volume isn't necessarily there, and I think that has to hinder him a little bit.
Yeah. So I just looked at it. He had 104 total opportunities over the playoffs. So that's 450 for those of you counting at home. Total opportunities he had through the regular season and postseason. Like that's nuts. And I don't know if you said this as I was looking at it, Will. He had crazy amounts of like 40, 50, 60-yard like touchdowns, which is incredible for fantasy. But he's
a walking one-man drive. One-play drive,
right? But can he do it again though? Yeah. You know what I mean? On top of losing a piece on your offensive line, and they stayed majority healthy. He stayed healthy too. We always talked about how talented he was, but he outside of his rookie season played one full season after that. You know what I mean? Like 13 games, played 2 games, 13 games. So like, and he played 16 games this year, which is very good for him. Like I'm happy for him, and I hope he does. I don't wish it upon anyone, any player, but that's not his norm. It's outside of his norm. So, we'll see. I know it sounds very negative on Saquon Barkley, but listen, I think he was the running back like 8 or 9 last year. You know what
12.
I mean? Or 12. Thank you. And he skyrockets to running back 3. So we're down on Saquon Barkley, but in the grand scheme of things, like he's a smash play to have on your fantasy team.
He's absolutely in number 1 overall conversation, but it's this number right here, the 2.7 targets a game last year. When you're thinking about Bijan and Gibbs, those numbers are going to be much higher for them, and it just creates more opportunities.
Oh yeah. Speaking of old running backs, number 4 on our list, you can't leave him out.
No.
Christian McCaffrey, CMC. We were just talking about Brock Purdy getting that extension, and I think that's huge for someone like Christian McCaffrey because he makes his bread and butter. Like he's a do it all kind of guy, and is such a volume play. He takes the majority of snap share, no matter when he was in Carolina or here in San Francisco. It's at 29 years old though, can he still take that insane workload and be okay?
Yeah.
I think me personally, as I'm sitting here and like mentally kind of like battling back and forth, I think him not playing a full season last year is going to help him this year, give him more fresher legs.
Hopefully.
And this might be the last hurrah that you get from an elite Christian McCaffrey season.
Yeah, out of all the people that we're going to talk about on this show, McCaffrey was easily the hardest one for me to find a spot for because having him outside of the top 5 is like a crazy thought.
Yes.
But it's something you have to think about now because of, he has 3 seasons now where he's played 7 games or less due to injuries, which again, like the whole injury prone thing, like, yeah, guys get hurt more often than not. Some players might get hurt more often than not, but it's the NFL. It's 100% injury rate, every single season. And he's just gotten unlucky. But when he does play full seasons, he's the running back 1. He's the running back 2. He's the running back 1. He's the running back 3. So it's like
when he plays a full season, like you wish you had him on your team. When he doesn't play a full season, you wish you never drafted him.
And I know we've had this conversation on the show before because I brought up the question of like, specifically redraft, like where you have to draft him. Are you willing to take that risk? And kind of you're playing the opportunity cost here of drafting him high, but then you can also get burned, or do you sit there and let somebody else make that decision and he goes off and he's the running back 1 and you're kind of like kicking yourself?
Yeah.
I think if gun to my head right now, I have to make this decision. I don't think I'm drafting him. I fully expect my mind to change about 36 more times
of course,
throughout the rest of the summer and even up into draft season. But having him outside the top 5 just seems crazy because I'm not going to sit here and predict injuries. Yeah. I'm not going to do that. So that's why I have him at 4 on my list.
I'll tell you right now, I think everybody in our Bonnet League is terrified to take him.
Colin, you have nightmares. I know you do, dude. And I would too. It's okay. It's okay.
Coming in at number 5, Mr. Eternal himself, Derrick Henry, the post 30-year-old back. Turned around and gave it, one of the best seasons that I think we've seen a 30-year-old running back give. I know we said it, in the news when we talked about his contract, but I'm going to say it again. 1,921 rushing yards, 5.9 yards per carry. This guy had almost 6 yards a carry when he was touching the ball. 16 touchdowns, and then Derrick Henry had 2 receiving touchdowns. Like, who is this man?
Yeah.
Who is this man?
And he also only had 57% of snaps last year, which is some of the lowest out of his career totals.
Yeah. And so and that's good to see though. Like it's kind of in the Gibbs camp where it's good to see that he can be very productive on, about half of the running back targets and can still rush for, 1,900 yards. Again, I think in this current state of Derrick Henry, I am, happy for him that he was able to get, multi-year extension and all that. But I do think that, I don't think we see him run for. Do we see him run for 1,900 yards again? Like,
He's like LeBron, man.
Like
every time he plays another year, it's like, what is going on?
Like in my heart of hearts, or sorry, in my head, and just like knowing fantasy football, knowing what to avoid and things like that. Like you want to avoid a 31-year-old running back who just came off of a year where they had 347 opportunities, but it's like. But none of them are Derrick Henry.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? None of them are Derrick Henry where he just run. I don't know. I'm floored.
He had 20 attempts a game last year. 20. And 19 of them were running the ball.
Yeah.
We already know that the receiving game isn't, it's not necessarily a big part of his repertoire, but to have 20 opportunities a game, 20 times you're touching the ball at 30 years old. He had 5 games where he wasn't a top 10 running back on the week. And quick math here. He had 7 games where he was a top 5 running back on the week.
Yeah. You know what? I'm in the camp. I'm on the Derrick Henry train. I'm going down with the ship.
Yeah.
That's gonna be me.
Yeah.
If he's sitting there in like the middle, like if I were in like the middle of the second round of like a redraft league,
It's an auto pick.
like
I would even say early second.
right. I think I'm in on Derrick Henry this year
For sure.
I have to be, and I want to let me just double check here
Because it's like one of those. Because I think it was, I forget if it was last year or the year before, kind of where he was creeping up on that that big age number that everybody gets nervous about, and I had an opportunity to take him, and I was like, I don't know if I can do it, man. And at the end of the year, it's like you didn't draft Derrick Henry, like what are you thinking?
Yep. And the Ravens have the 9th hardest strength of schedule, which I thought they were going to have a way harder strength of schedule. So, we'll see.
It's a dominant offense.
11.5 wins. You think they go over 11.5?
Yeah,
I'd have to see who.
I really want to see.
Who they cross over with.
They have a lot of guys on their team that I like to root for, and
their defense is gonna be nuts.
Yeah, I just want they gotta win a Super Bowl one of these years, man. Lamar's got to get one. He's got to get one. It would be cool for Derrick Henry too.
Where is? Oh, they kick off the season playing the Bills.
Yeah.
Bills, Browns, Lions, Chiefs. That's a tough opening.
Oh, okay.
Looks like they play the NFC North, so the Bears, the Vikings, the Packers.
It's gonna be tough, man.
Yeah. So
maybe they'll be battle tested.
We'll see.
Sure.
We'll see. All right, moving into number 6 on our list is Ashton Genty of the Las Vegas Raiders. And you're probably thinking, Meek, Wu, you have a rookie running back in your top 6? Yeah, I know it's crazy, but this man is not like any other men you've ever seen before. Like, it's kind of crazy that we have him and Derrick Henry back to back because they're just absolute freaks of nature.
Mm-hmm.
But we've ranted and raved about Ashton Genty. I think he now has the opportunity, and I like the current state of the Las Vegas Raiders offense for Ashton Genty this year in redraft because there's not much going on. It's Geno Smith, Brock Bowers, and really nobody else. I mean, I know Jack Betch, is a rookie wide receiver there, but I don't expect much from him in his first year, and it's going to be. I can see it now. I'm going to tell you exactly how the Raiders season is going to go.
Hit me.
It's going to be ground and pound football the entire time. It's going to be Genty down your throat, and then Geno Smith's going to go play action, and then they're going to hit Brock Bowers up the seam for a touchdown. And then they're going to be the occasional times where Genty rips off like a 30-yard touchdown here and there. And the Raiders are going to actually surprise people, and I hate it because I hate the Raiders, but I love Ashton Genty. But.
Yeah, I think when he got drafted to the Raiders, this was definitely one of the better spots for him to land because it's his backfield. Nobody should be questioning that. I don't care who else is on that roster and how long they've been in the league. It's Ashton Genty. You have the keys. Here you go. And I was trying to pull it up. I don't know. I'm going to go off the top of my head here. I know I saw it a couple weeks ago, but I think his rushing prop for the year, rushing yards, wasn't it like 1,100 yards?
I know we were talking about it, and we set the line at 1150, but I think I didn't see anything official. Well. I wonder if I can pull up a DraftKings really quick.
Yeah, you look for that, but
yeah,
it sounds kind of silly to be basing how you think someone's going to do based off prop bets, and especially when a guy's a rookie and you have nothing to base it off of NFL wise. But we all know Caesar knows what he's doing out in Vegas.
Always,
he knows what he's doing out in Vegas. So if the books have him over 1,000 yards, like I'm going to think about him being a 1,000-yard rusher, and like I said, fantasy football is all about opportunities, and can your guys touch the ball as much as possible and create points for you? And Ashton Genty absolutely has that opportunity.
Yeah. I'm struggling to find it, but maybe I can find it later.
Maybe I'm dreaming here. I don't know. I thought
I don't know if props are season long props are live yet on DK. I think they come out a little bit later. But
if that's the case, then watch for those props to drop. And when Ashton Genty's north of 1,000 yards, hammer him.
Hammer it. Are there any questions about him taking on a full NFL schedule? I don't know who the Raiders are crossing over with this year.
What
but
I will say is
up.
the tape. I'm not scared of anything that I saw on tape. I think it will transfer. The thing I want to look at is just how many touches he had last year.
Yeah.
Yes, it's Boise State, Rondo. I hear you. JV offense, JV teams, whatever.
I can hear him now.
But when you have, of course, ESPN doesn't want to cooperate with me.
So I'll take over as you're looking at that. So it looks as though it's the NFC East. So it's Eagles, Cowboys, Commanders, and Giants. And he's gonna smash the Giants, and then
I don't know, man. That defensive line is crazy.
That's true. That's true. That's true.
That's a
I totally forgot
defense.
about it. And then the AFC is the AFC South. So Colts, Jags, Texans, and why am I blanking on the last team?
Who'd you say?
Colts, Jags, Texans,
Titans.
There it is.
Dog.
So those are some easy.
Yeah, he
smash
ran the
plays
ball
there
374 times last year. I think he can take on.
I think he could do it again too.
And they're gonna work with him. Yeah, they have other guys who can. Because he is a smaller guy. If he needs to come off the field and kind of get his feet wet first into the NFL and work his way in first few weeks, sure, I'm fine with that. But it's his backfield, no question about that.
Yeah.
The tape speaks for itself. Let's be real.
Absolutely. Moving on to number 7 on our list, we have Devon Achane of the Miami Dolphins. Devon Achane, I feel as though this is a little bit disrespectful towards him. However, I think a lot of his, fantasy production relies on the health of Tua.
True.
Right. I'm trying to pull it up right now. There was a certain stretch of the week, weeks 3 through, we'll call it 10, where he really struggled when in Tua's absence.
Yeah.
He was the running back 36, 50, 55, 26, and then week 10 he was the running back 28, and then this last stretch I'm assuming, Tua was healthy and back, and, he's the running back 7, 12, 16, and 22. So
3 in there.
You know what I mean? I think it's very dependent on his, Tua's health, because when Tua's there, Tua targets him, and, he's not the absolute focal point of the offense. But I also know, and I'm glad that Miami actually got some sort of backup. They don't have to trot out, Skylar Thompson. That at least Zach Wilson is there, so they can at least try. Listen,
I thought you were going the Quinn Ewers route. I didn't expect Zach Wilson's
No,
name
absolutely
to be out
not.
there.
Quinn Ewers is irrelevant to me. But at least Zach Wilson can, be somewhat of a threat with the football in his hands, throwing the ball deep, and takes the pressure off. For someone like Devon Achane.
Yeah.
And it's not Skylar Thompson where it's like, we need you, Devon Achane, to save our season. But again, another dual threat guy. And in all the talks that we've heard of over the offseason, I know Mike McDaniel will always kind of scheme, routes and touches for someone like Devon Achane, which, you love to see for fantasy.
100%. The one thing I will say when it comes to, the Tua question marks and, how his health can affect Achane's production and in that nature. But I think the big thing that I'm starting to lean towards, being a little bit more confident in the Dolphins. Last year was terrible. The year before, they're one of the most explosive offenses in the league. It was fantasy points galore. Didn't matter who you had in your fantasy team. If they were wearing a Dolphins jersey, you were happy. When Tua goes down this year, and that was his, I don't even know how many concussions at that point.
50th.
And it gets to the point where he is deciding if it is even safe for him to play football anymore. And he ends up choosing to come back to football. I'm going to sit here and say that Tua is not dumb enough to put himself in a situation, like a dangerous situation of going back to football. So the fact that he landed on the decision to go back to playing football with all of these health concerns, that adds confidence to me, because if it was if I'm Tua and I'm sitting there and I'm like, oh my, like I don't even know if I can play anymore, and it's a question of my life or playing football. Like I'm not picking football if my life is in that much jeopardy. So
Right.
the fact that he landed on football, that gives me confidence, and with that follows confidence in Devon Achane. Like you said, he can line up anywhere. Yeah, he's a dual threat guy. He's not gonna kill you on the ground, but he's got that home run potential where it might only take a couple runs, and all of a sudden he's got 80 yards, and you're like, oh my
Sure.
god, what happened?
My question for you for Devon Achane is there what is Devon Achane's ceiling for this fantasy season? Do you see him?
His play style can make me think one. I don't know if he'll actually get that high.
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking like 3 to 5, and you're like, okay, yeah, that was a great year from HN. I'm really happy.
Yeah. Okay. I like that
Because I just think like Bijan and Gibbs, they're just another step. Even Barkley, like they're just a step above HN. And HN's young. Like he's what, 23, 22?
Yes.
I have it right here.
I
So
23.6. Yeah,
Yeah.
so he'll be 24 by the season starts.
yeah, he's played 2 NFL seasons. And for him to be where he is right now, I think is very impressive. And I don't have anything negative to say of HN. We just need to see what happens to it.
Absolutely. Moving on to number 8 is Josh Jacobs of the Green Bay Packers. Josh Jacobs, for some reason, I just feel like it was such a sneaky good season for him.
It really was.
He was the running back 6, had 344 opportunities, 1,329 yards. 15 touchdowns. He had 3 fumbles, and then finally got that receiving touchdown.
That's such a crazy stat. I thought it was fake when it came up on the TV.
Isn't that crazy? But I think in Green Bay Packers fans' minds, I don't think they expected Josh Jacobs to be this good.
Yeah.
I think they expected him to be good and, work well in the offense, but I don't think we expected him to be 1,300 yards good. You know what I mean? Like, and we always talked about how, Matt LaFleur, the way he schemes his running backs is it's never like one running back takes the entire load. It's broken off between 2, sometimes even 3 running backs, and they tried to do that. They drafted Marshawn Lloyd, but the man was made of glass and didn't really play as much. And then Emmanuel Wilson isn't that guy. AJ Dillon was hurt, so they had no choice but to lean on Josh Jacobs. But I guess my question is, do you see Josh Jacobs giving us a season like this, or do you think that Green Bay is going to try to implement more running backs to give him, some rest?
I think they probably will try to implement a little bit more than they did last year. He had 63% of the snaps for running backs. Like you said, like LaFleur always tries to work in another running back here and there. It's never been, a dominated backfield like it was last year, which is why last year was such a nice surprise out of Jacobs. But I think it's if they do start working on the running backs, anybody that can stay healthy and be on the field and be available, I don't think it's going to be enough to really destroy Josh Jacobs, in any case. 1,300 yards was obviously crazy. I think he can be an 11 to 13. While he stays on Green Bay, it's a high-powered offense. They're going to give him the ball and the volume's on his side. But he's not a receiving back, and that's okay because of how much volume he gets. And even him not being considered a receiving threat, he still had 43 targets last year. Nothing too it's a decent enough number is basically what I'm trying to say.
Right. And I think the other thing too, I know we talked about like keys of targeting running backs in your fantasy drafts. Obviously dual threat guys who are going to catch the ball but also run the ball. But if you're not able to get a dual threat guy, you want a running back that's going to be on a good offense. That you know what I mean. So
plenty of red zone opportunities.
Like Derrick Henry, right? Derrick Henry isn't known for his receiving threat, but he plays on the Baltimore Ravens. They're a good team. Josh Jacobs not known for really receiving, but he's on a great offense in Green Bay. And I'm just looking at his box scores from the bye week on. So they had the bye week in week 10. So from weeks 11 to 17 was the running back 5, 2, 10, 3, 6, and then 14 and 16. Like the guy was always in the green, you know, when it came to like fantasy finishes on a weekly basis.
Yeah. And when it comes to attempts, or inside the red zone specifically, in his 5 years in Vegas, he averaged 45 red zone attempts. Last year he had 59.
Hey,
So when it comes to, you know, being on a good team and a good offense pays off.
it matters.
It definitely matters. It creates scoring opportunities. And there's no reason for me to think Green Bay is going to take any step back on the offensive side of the ball. So there's going to be more opportunities than not for Josh Jacobs.
Yep. Moving into our running back 9, Kyren Williams of the Los Angeles Rams, you know, had a phenomenal season, 1,299 yards, 14 touchdowns, and then had 182 receiving yards and 2 receiving touchdowns. This offense is not changing anytime soon.
Nope.
You know, I think they have found their secret sauce, you know, in terms of, you know, Sean McVay, and I think it relies on Kyren Williams. He had 356 opportunities last year, which is, you know, you love to see. I think, you know, the whole talk last year and the fear of like Blake Corum coming in and potentially taking touches away, there's none of that this year, you know. And I think it's, you know, wheels up, and Kyron's going to get every single touch imaginable, especially I believe this year he's in a contract year, so even more motivation for him to go out and ball out each week.
Yeah, 81% of snaps last year. Like, that's, if you're drafting a running back, like, you want to see that number as high as possible, and I'm not sure there's anybody else in the league who's going to have it as high as that. LA obviously loves this guy. It's still going to be a good offense. You know, Matthew Stafford's towards the end of his career, but I still think they're going to be a 9+ win team. They'll be in playoff contention. They'll be playing important games late in the year.
Yep.
So Kyren will get opportunities that matter. And like you said, like the Blake Corum situation, like last year was a little scary. I'm not going to lie. I thought it was an interesting situation, something you had to monitor. Mm-hmm. Not anymore. He had 81% of snaps, 356 opportunities. The touchdowns, so last year he had 14. The year before he had 12 when he came onto the scene. Those are high numbers for running backs, and we talk about it all the time. Touchdowns are not a sticky stat. You can't predict touchdowns, but clearly when push comes to shove and they got to get the ball into the end zone from inside the 5 or inside the 10, you know he's going to have the opportunities, and we're looking for opportunities.
Absolutely. And I the one also thing I want to point out too is that, you know, I think with a healthy Puka Nacua and, you know, Devontae Adams as your number 2 wide receiver, it's going to open up so much room for him in a lot of running lanes. So I'm excited for Kyren. Running back 10, we're going to move on to our running back 10 is Jonathan Taylor of the Indianapolis Colts. You know, this one kind of, you know, I hemmed and haw on this one. You know, he was the running back 12 last year, but, you know, didn't have a great season. Had a really good, you know, third or quarter of the season, we'll call it. You know, where he was the running back 14, 17, 1, and 4. You know, I think his issue is not the talent. The things that scare me for Jonathan Taylor is, you know, the offensive line, because, you know, they lost 2 interior offensive linemen, which is huge. Yeah. And then the uncertainty at quarterback. You know, obviously we know that they're gonna run Anthony Richardson first, but, you know, I don't think Anthony Richardson is going to finish the season as the starting quarterback of the Indianapolis Colts. You know, I think they're going to bounce around, and with that uncertainty, that kind of scares me for someone like Jonathan Taylor. Love the talent, love the man, but, you know, sometimes you have to look at the situation as a whole, and that kind of scares me.
Yeah, when I got towards the bottom of my list, I have him at 11, so one spot behind. But when I got to like the 10 range, 10 through 12, you know, I was like, I don't have Jonathan Taylor on my list yet. And I was like, I feel like he has to be on there, right? And then I was like kind of sitting there. I was like, maybe he doesn't. Like, there could be other names that I like more. I eventually ended up with him at 11. He does own the backfield, so that's always going to be a massive plus when it comes to, you know, thinking these things out. I agree. The Anthony Richardson and just the whole quarterback situation in general is really scary, you know, when it comes to those added touches in the receiving game, because his targets have come down every single year. So, you know, he had 51 in 2021 when he was the running back 1, 40, and then 2023 he had 23, and last year he had 31. So they came up a little bit. But it was good to see him play 14 games because he has dealt with some injuries the last couple of years. But like I said, he owns the backfield, so that's like a major plus for me, which is kind of how I kind of pushed him into the back half of that list.
Yeah.
But yeah, the quarterback situation is really scary. I think what can help him is when the quarterback situation is as bad as it is, they're going to have to lean on him and rely heavily on him.
I guess my thing is like if you were able to guarantee me that, John, we're gonna see the like last quarter of the season of Jonathan Taylor, I think I'd be all in on it because he was unstoppable.
Yeah,
you know,
two
what I mean?
number one weeks,
right? Like he was just the absolute man. During the fantasy playoffs. But if you could guarantee me, we get that version of Jonathan Taylor, and the Colts are going to use him like that, I think he easily finishes within the top 10.
The thing that really scares me is the efficiency. He had a couple weeks here I want to talk about. Week 9 against Minnesota, he had 18 opportunities, running back 35 on the week. Week 11 against the Jets, he has 26 opportunities, running back 28 on the week. Week 12, I'm looking at the wrong one. Week 1, he had 16 opportunities. He's running back 29. So there's a lot of inefficient weeks here where he's still getting that large number of touches, and it's not translating to fantasy points.
Yeah.
And losing 2 guys in the offensive line is not going to help.
Definitely doesn't help. All right, 2 more in our top 12, and then we'll go into our honorable mentions. Number 11 we have is Alvin Kamara. Alvin Kamara, year in, year out, is always a top 10 running back, and I think this year is going to be no different, especially now that Derek Carr retires, and it's going to be a quarterback battle for whoever the starting quarterback is. But the only thing that is going to be constant on this New Orleans Saints offense is the offense runs through Alvin Kamara. He had crazy. The man always has at least 20 plus opportunities per game, and you love to see that. There was a stretch from week 8 to 15 before he got hurt where he was the running back 15, 4, 15, 19, 13, 23, and 16 at essentially 30 years old. He's still giving you at least running back 2 and higher weeks, which is huge. And I think people are going to sleep on Alvin Kamara again in redraft circles and things like that because of how poor this Saints offense is going to be, but he's going to have so much volume. It's insane.
Yeah, when I first made my list, I had him in at 12. I did adjust him, and he is outside of my top 12 right now, right before we did the show. I do have him as an honorable mention, though. We'll get to some of those names later, but at first with the Derek Carr retirement, I was like, oh, Kamara's going to be a smash play. He's going to be the entire offense. He opportunities have never been an issue for him. He's always been guaranteed a large sum of opportunities, which is translated to lots of fantasy points and very good fantasy finishes. I think he's going to be a really useful tool for whoever they end up throwing out at quarterback. I'm assuming it's going to be Shaw. There's no way they draft him in the second round and say, we're not going to play you. I think Spencer Rattler and I forget the other guy's name.
Jake Hayner.
Yeah, exactly. Like if there were any threat, they wouldn't have taken Shaw. But anyways, I think he'll be really helpful for Shaw. Kamara's going to get plenty of targets game in and game out. I think those numbers are going to go up this year. The age, he's going to be 30. I don't know if he's on the Derrick Henry physicality level where you can kind of sit here and be confident of where he is at this age. But he's a very smart runner. He doesn't waste a lot of his energy. So I think that'll help at this later age of his career. But yeah, man, that Saints offense is gonna be bad. I had him in at 12, and I was thinking about it today.
They're gonna be the worst team in the NFL, aren't they?
Yeah, they're not gonna, and they're always in cap hell, and I'm pretty sure they still are, even with Carr off the books. So it's like they just have no flexibility to improve this roster. And then oh my God, week 3 through 9, they lost 7 in a row. Oh jeez.
Yep. It's going to be tough in the streets for Saints fans, but hopefully Alvin Kamara gets enough, volume that makes him a fantasy relevant running back.
Yeah, I really want to root for Kamara. I think if there is any case for him, it's because he's going to be the entire offense.
Yeah.
But then, we're no NFL defensive coordinators, but like we can sit here and say, okay, let's load the box and beat us with anybody else. I dare you. So those are my two sides to the coin.
That'll be an interesting storyline to see next year. But we're gonna move into our last running back, 12 on the list, Mr. Breece Hall from the New York Jets. I actually had him outside of my top 12. I'm actually glad he snuck into our top 12 because
you think he wasn't going to be on my list?
No, he was definitely going to make your list. But I guess sell us on the bounce back of Breece Hall. Whoa.
There's a few points I want to make here. First, we did our NFL draft winners and losers, and I would be remiss to say that I did not leave him off unintentionally because he is a massive NFL draft winner.
Yeah.
Because there were so many talks of this is going to be a split backfield, which it still could be. Or, they're going to go Genty or they're going to go another direction. He's going to be a trade piece in this draft. He might not be a Jet after this draft. And he survived all of it, which I love. Second, a couple of things I want to talk about. According to what I'm looking at right now, he's 23.9 years of age. There's a couple other names we talked about here earlier in the list. Bijan Robinson, Jahmyr Gibbs, Devon Achane. How old are they?
23.
Okay. Just want to make sure we're picking up what I'm putting down here.
I'm picking it up.
I think the Breece Hall disrespect is nuts because he plays for a god-awful team. Like, it's just the truth. His rookie year, he tears his ACL. He only plays 7 games. Then he comes back, and he is the running back 4 in 23, and last year's a really down year. He's the running back 17. He has yet to have a 1,000-yard rushing season, and Charles Barkley, what he likes to say?
What does he say?
I guarantee it that he's going to have 1,000 rushing yards this year.
On May 19th, we're giving a guarantee?
Yeah, I guarantee it.
God.
That offensive line, they finally have a solid offensive line with, I think, incredible potential to be even better than solid. Aaron Glenn, he's going to want to run the ball. He comes from Detroit where that was their bread and butter. The one thing that I will say I have Breece at 10 on my list. The reason why I don't have him higher is because of the Justin Fields piece and the dump offs. Obviously, Rodgers, it was bing, bing, bing. Give you the ball and go do your thing. I still think there will be design touches for that.
76 targets last year.
I still think there will be design touches for that. But with the off-schedule ones, I think those will come down because I'm sussy for Jussie, man. He can run, and I want him to run. But I think the big thing this year for Breece is going to be what he does on the ground. And I think whatever receiving piece he gets will only elevate him.
Yeah,
that's what I got.
I really hope so. And listen, I love the explanation. The thing that scares me as I look at, and I know he's only been in the league for 3 years, and I know he's only 24 years old, but each year, rookie season, 5.8 yards per carry. Next year, 4.5, and then this last year he had 4.2 yards per carry. That's not what you want to see in a young, stud running back.
Sure, but he was running behind you and me.
Very true, and maybe this is the year where it all turns around. But I think there were at times when you watched him last year where he looked lethargic. It didn't really look well, and I don't know if there was an underlying injury or anything like that. But I just want to see the Breece Hall that we all expected and saw, the first half of his rookie season and then the second half of his sophomore season where he just dominated everything.
He's a home run ball waiting to happen. And I think there's 2 major points that I want to make here on why I'm in on Breece. The offensive line, which I already touched on, and then the play style that I think Aaron Glenn wants to implement with the Jets. I have no idea what the touch percentages are going to be across the board. But when it comes to the rest of the backfield, it's Braylon Allen and Isaiah Davis. 2 very young. They got some explosiveness to them. Like, I'm not going to sit here and say that they're scrubs. There is absolutely an avenue where those guys can have some serious work and eat into Breece's production. But I think when it comes to talent level, Breece is absolutely on another level compared to those guys. And if everything stays the same and the health isn't an issue, this is a home run play for Breece, man. I'm all in.
Yeah. We will have to see. Like we said, these are our early rankings. Everything's fluid. Things could change. Wu has him at 10. Could have him at 5 come the next year. I mean, by the start of the year, you never know. Some honorable mentions. We're going to move into and talk about. We'll go tit for tat. But the main one I want to point out to everybody is Kenneth Walker the third.
Do you guys know that Meek likes Kenneth Walker?
I am all in on Kenneth Walker. Listen, I'm glad he didn't make our list because I want him to, stay below the surface. But, the same thing that I've talked about all year and on this podcast about this year for the Seattle Seahawks is Clint Kubiak is now the offensive coordinator. They've spoken so many times that they've wanted to run the ball, and they didn't invest in any running backs in the draft, which, they very well could have, you know what I mean? Because, Kenneth Walker isn't theirs. It's a brand new regime. But they didn't do that. They've talked about how talented Kenneth Walker is. He's had some bad injury luck. But, like Wu said before with Christian McCaffrey, we're not going to sit here and say that, a player's injury prone. I'm going to take the opportunity. I'm going to take what the coach is saying about him. And I think I won't be shocked if he's, in the top 8, for fantasy finishes for running backs this year if everything goes well.
I agree with a lot of what you just said, so I'm not going to sit here and be an echo. The one thing I will say is last year I had him in our redraft league, and it was very fun the first few weeks. He does have that injury in week 2 and 3, which kind of slowed me down, but I had just injuries all over the board, so it wasn't his fault that I had to trade him. It was just kind of something I had to do.
Yep.
But the weeks I had him, it was a lot of fun, man. Like, he's a dog. He's another home run guy. He's not necessarily actually, no, he's got 4.4 speed. What am I talking about?
Yeah, he does.
He's a home run guy. I think they can lean on him, give him a bunch of opportunities. I think he had about 18 opportunities a game last year, and we just haven't seen him play a full healthy season. So like I said, I'm not going to sit here and predict an injury. And like Meek said, the coaching staff is fully behind him.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the style of play
and their first round pick was an interior offensive lineman.
Exactly.
So,
and I don't think Seattle's going to be very good this year. I think there's going to be a lot of Kenneth Walker touches running the ball.
That's the only thing that scares me, though, is that Seattle's not going to be a good team. Does that mean, though, that they're going to be in games all the time, or are they just going to get blown out and then, Darnold has to throw the ball all over the yard? And
thankfully, there's not a lot of guys to throw to, so Kenneth Walker is probably going to be an option.
Exactly. Who do you have?
Because he did have 53 targets last year.
He did, and hopefully he keeps going up there.
Yeah.
Who do you have for an honorable mention, though, Will?
Yeah, my first one's gonna be Chuba.
Yeah, that's your guy.
Love some Chuba, man. That's my keeper. Shout out Steve for that. Oh wait, no, it was you that I traded.
Yeah, it was me.
Yeah,
it was me.
Yeah. So not only did I
I'll
trade
take the championship though.
Yeah. So not only did I trade for him in our redraft league with Malik, I also traded for him in Dynasty, going for a championship. I sold out big time, and I won't apologize for it because I'm all in on Chuba. There was a lot of concern. Last year they drafted, oh my God, Jonathan Brooks, and he goes down with another ACL injury. Prior to that,
they put him on the physically unable to perform list.
Yeah, no, he can't play this year.
So now he can't play this year. He's out.
But even prior to that injury, they had given Chuba an extension with a healthy amount of money. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but it was a healthy amount of money for me to sit here and say that I can be very confident in the opportunities that Chuba can get. Last year, he had 77% of the snaps, 250 rushing attempts. He had 54 targets, and he only scored 6 times. So, I mean, not the Carolina offense was obviously not good. Towards the back half of the year, it started to trend upwards, and we got to see some good stuff out of Bryce Young. But I think that's the piece here is that because we're seeing Bryce Young trend up, I'd expect the offense to get better. They go out and get McMillan. They have a weapon on the outside.
Yep.
It's Chuba's, like I said, it's Chuba's backfield. I don't expect anybody to take this from him. I think the other guy
not
they
afraid
have,
of little Rico Daddle.
Yep, no, not afraid of Rico Daddle, not at all.
Rico had 1,000 yards rushing last year.
Yeah, whatever.
All right,
I'm not scared.
All right,
give me all the Chuba.
All right. My last honorable mention that I'm going to give you is Quinshon Judkins, rookie running back from the Cleveland Browns. We talked about this in the draft winners and losers episode that we had. I won't be shocked with the amount of volume that I predict in my brain that Quinshon Judkins gets, that he could potentially be a top 12 wide receiver, running back in his rookie season. You look at the situation that he's in. we have no idea who's playing quarterback. You
No
know what I
idea.
mean? And in this Kevin Stefanski system, it's such ground and pound. You know, he immediately comes in and he fills that Nick Chubb role of like, we're just gonna run the ball down your throat every single time, and then maybe we'll hit you with a play action here and there. And I think he's someone who can, you know, step up to the plate and take that workload and take that beating, because he is a bruiser of a man. So I think if everything goes well with Cleveland, and you know the offense is hitting on all cylinders the way that they expect it to, I think it's because Quinshon Judkins is going to have himself a great season.
Yeah, I think this is a really interesting pick here. It's definitely a name I'm keeping in the back of my mind for redraft, because I think there's some high-level value here of where he's going to go in those drafts. And again, like, it's a great situation for him. I know they took Dylan Sampson too, but the draft capital supports Quinshon Judkins. Like you said, we have no idea who's going to be playing quarterback. Stefanski's done all right with, you know, Nick Chubb in the past. I'm sure that's going to translate. I'm very high on Quinshon Judkins. I had him as my RB2 in this class. I still stand on that. The talent is absolutely there. When we were doing our rookie profiles, I said that Judkins could be a 3-down back. I still believe that. He's definitely a name that you need to be looking at in your redraft leagues, because I think there's a lot of value there.
Absolutely. All right, and round us out, Will. Your last honorable mention looks like it's another rookie here.
Yeah, I mean, it hurts, man, but it hurts. But
wow, you're jumping on the bandwagon.
I have to be honest here, man. Like, I got to tell how it is. It's Travion Henderson, running back for the Patriots. I'm a D1 Patriots hater. I'm pretty sure you could have picked up on that by now. I was a 5-star. But yeah, it's just, I still can't believe that the Patriots had an opportunity to draft him. I thought Henderson would slip into that first round or even earlier in the second. But for him to land in New England, I think the Ramondre experience is over. Even if they're still going to have Ramondre as a feature of that backfield.
Yeah, they at least have to this year, and then, you know, figure it out in the draft or whatever.
But the explosiveness and the flashiness of Henderson, the fans will fall in love with it, and I'm sure the coaching staff is going to as well. Drake May is going to love him. Yes, Drake May can move a little bit, and he can run when he needs to. But there was a lot of times last year where Drake May would not slide, and if the coaching staff does not bury that in his head, like, you need to get down or just give the ball to Travion Henderson.
Yeah.
So I think that's going to be a big piece, because he took a lot of big hits, and if he wants to have a long NFL career, he needs to stop doing that.
The number one thing that just sticks out to me with this Travion Henderson pick is Josh McDaniels, and
that's the
like
piece.
It's just synonymous with, you know, a McDaniels offense, that you have a dynamic receiving threat. I think we all agree that Drake May was a great dual threat, you know, quarterback in college, and has that ability. But I think with McDaniels running this offense, I think he's going to do a little bit less running, and, you know,
for his health, he should.
Correct. And I think that Travion Henderson's going to become the beneficiary of that, you know, receiving dump offs and things like that. And that's what you love to see for, you know, in PPR formats.
And even if they still somewhat believe in Ramondre, and because I do think Ramondre is the lead going into the year, by week 8, we're going to be like, okay, yeah, it's Henderson time. Like, it's no doubt about it. Because even if they do have that still a little bit of faith in Ramondre, the fumbling was a massive.
It's not a matter
issue.
of if, it's a matter of when.
Correct.
Travion Henderson takes over.
Could not agree more.
So there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. That is episode 20 wrapped up of the Fourth and Fantasy podcast.
It's nuts.
Listen, we're here hopefully to give you, you know, 20,000 more episodes, you know what I mean? But please make sure you're following us on all of our socials, Twitter at Fourth and Fantasy Pod, Instagram and TikTok at Fourth and Fantasy. Make sure you're leaving a like or a comment, and you might see yourself on the next episode of the show. But with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, we appreciate you listening, and we'll see you on the other side.
See ya.